And to wrap up the kind of insights and takeaways for this portion where we added in a musical track, I just want to touch on why I was deciding to cut the way that I did. So if I expand this a little bit, we can see clearly that these four video clips are really the same length. That means the pacing is equal between this section of the edit. So let's go ahead and play that through. Boom, boom, boom. The reason I decided to do that is because the track was dictating the way I was cutting. So you can feel that right here, what you're hearing is the strong beat that's happening. Boom right there, boom right there, boom right there, and boom right there. And then what changes in the track is that strong beat moves to this portion where things go and slow down, right? So when you're not knowing when to cut or when to really switch things up on your edit or what pacing to have, and you're using a musical track, what I want you to take away from this lesson is that you're using your ear and the beat and the rhythm to dictate what is shown and what is being cut. And if I cut to something that's not as primary as what we are cutting to here and really following the rhythm and the pacing of the song, let's say we cut to the bells in the background. Okay, there's a bell right there. So we'll see what that looks like. So you can see we're using the same shots in literally the same exact ordering, but you're feeling the moments differently, and there's different emphasis given to different moments depending on where they're lined up with your audio track, with your musical track, and where those strong beats or striking points are hitting your footage. So really think about that and keep that in mind as you're putting your edits together and as we're moving together throughout the rest of this course. So now that we've finished these important first steps for this section, I want to now go through the exporting process and some of the really just key fundamentals with that. Now, we've been working, and it's likely you've been working as well in the vertical video format category. So we'll walk through what it is like exporting for vertical video, horizontal video, and really also keeping in mind that you want to export with the proper settings of where that video is going to live. If that video is going to live on YouTube, you're going to export with certain settings. If it's going to live on Instagram, it's different settings, and so on. So let's hop in here and see our final edit here. And I want you to pull up your footage as well so you can follow along. And we're going to go up to File. We're going to go to Export, and we're going to click on Media. And actually, before we do that, we want to make sure that the in and out points in our timeline are in the proper place. You can see up here on the top bar of our timeline, we want to have it so that the in point is at the beginning, and of course the out point is at the end. What'll happen if the out point, I'm hitting I for in point, O for out point, by the way. If the out point is here, it's going to export everything up to here and not include the rest of the video. So we always want to make sure that our in and out points are set properly for exactly what we want to export. Yeah, and one thing that I'll say that's kind of a little bit handy is if you want to kind of test something or share one part of your video with someone, or yeah, like what I'll do sometimes when I don't know if a certain scene is working, but I don't want to export the whole video, you can set an in point and an out point for just, a little 10-second clip and just export that part, right? So there's some cool uses for doing that. But for this circumstance, we're going to set the in point at the beginning, the out point at the very end. I'm going to go to File, going to go to Export and go to Media, or we can hit Command M, and that's going to do the same exact thing. This is going to bring up our export settings panel. And what we want to do here is make sure that our format is H.264. This is really the best format for online video, anything that you're sharing online where you want to retain as much quality as possible, but have it in a more manageable and optimized codec or format for online use, which is pretty much going to be almost every single one of your exports. Rarely do I ever use anything else in here. If I'm exporting just audio, I'll go and I'll use waveform audio, and then I'll set my sample rate or bit rate to 32-bit. That's going to give it the max quality as possible, and choose the destination. But that's separate. So right now what we're focusing on is exporting our video. So we're going to go H.264, and then we're going to go to the preset tab, and we're going to click that, okay? Because this is going to be, for this video specifically, viewed as an Instagram story format, what I'm going to do is choose the mobile device HD function, okay? If this was going to be a YouTube video per se, then I would go to YouTube video 1080p or 4K depending on what it was shot as. And a little bit of a pro tip here. When you are exporting a 1080p high def video file, which almost all cameras are shooting, and it's very likely that that's the format you'll be editing in, whether it's going to Vimeo, Facebook, or YouTube, a little bit of a hack is to click the 4K function. So you can do 4K for YouTube here, 4K for Vimeo right here, and you can do 4K for Facebook. What that's going to do is it's going to compress the information less, and it's going to give more space for all of the pixels, all of the data, and all of the information, even if it's a 1080p file. So you'll see that if you export a 1080p video for YouTube and that same exact 1080p video at 4K for YouTube, and you look at them side by side, you're going to see the 4K file is going to look a little bit more crisp. There's going to be a little bit more detail and a little bit more color and overall data that's in your footage and in your video, because YouTube is compressing it less, and these platforms are compressing it less because you're telling it it's a much larger file. So let's hop back into what we're currently exporting. This is going to be playing on a mobile device for Instagram. So for doing that, I always go to mobile device 1080p, and we can see our audio, video, effects, multiplexer, captions, publish. Okay. For audio, what I always do as well is it's going to, depending on your export preset, it's going to change your bit rate depending on the quality that you're exporting as. When you do mobile device 1080p, it puts your bit rate at 128. Okay, we want to have our audio at the highest settings as possible. We're going to make sure audio quality is set to high as well. We're going to go to the video tab, and we can also scrub through our export to get a preview of what it's going to be looking like. Now you can see there are these really big black bars on the side. That's because our aspect ratio is 1080 by 1920 instead of 1920 by 1080. So to get around this issue and not export a video with these big black bars, we're going to match the source of our sequence settings and make that match the settings for our export. So I'm going to click match source. And we can also click render at maximum depth and use maximum render quality. This is going to allow your editing software to work more frame by frame on each different characteristic and detail that's in each frame. And then we have the multiplexer tab. I really never go into here. These are really not parameters that you ever need to be changing for 99% of your edits. We have the caption tab as well that you really likely 99.9% of the time you will not be using. And then we have the publish tab, which this can be handy if you want to link Premiere directly with your Behance profile, Adobe profile, Facebook, Twitter, Vimeo, and YouTube. I personally don't ever export directly out of Premiere directly to another platform. To me, that I've spent so many years not having that function, it's just weird to me. Maybe I'm too set in my ways here, but I always like to have the individual file that I'm then dragging into where I want it to go. Maybe I'm old fashioned, but I don't ever use the publish function. But of course, take the time if it's applicable to you and would speed up your workflow, take the time to set it up. And now that we've got all these parameters set up, the final step is to click our output name to determine the name of our video file and the location, which is where the video file is going to be exported to. And I'm sure you can guess we're going to be keeping everything very organized and exporting it to the proper video folder. So I'm going to go to Shasta Edit and I'm going to create an exports folder. Okay. And I'm going to title it Mount Shasta. And this is a good time to kind of talk about labeling your exports. Now, a lot of the time, you export something and you think that's possibly going to be the final one. And then you realize, nope, there's some major changes that need to be made, or something's not working, whatever it is. The best way that I found, of course, you can label it by the date, Mount Shasta edit, so and so date. But what I've learned over the years is best to do version 1, version 2, version 3. So most of the time, almost all the time, I'll do the name of the project for the export name and then V1. If it's V2, it would be V2, V3, V3. Okay, so V1. And I also add where it's gonna live. So in this case, this is gonna be an Instagram story. Okay. So if it was going to be a normal post, it'd just be Instagram post. If it was going to be YouTube video, it'd be Instagram, or it would be, excuse me, Mount Shasta V1 YouTube. Okay. Mount Shasta V1 Facebook. So Mount Shasta V1 Instagram story. We're going to hit save. And then we're going to go down to hit the export button. Now that we have that exported, what I want to do is take that second version of the edit that we made and I want to change the aspect ratio so that it can be used for a slightly different post. So if we bring this up here and check out for Instagram, for example, the aspect ratio that we were just working in is this 1080 by 1920. That's the vertical format that we just did. And that's the vertical format of our second version with the music track. And what I want to do is walk you through how you can very easily change the same video to fit different types of posting or sharing mediums. So we're going to take this 10 by so we're going to take this 9 by 16 aspect ratio that we were so we're going to take this 9 by 16 aspect ratio that we were originally working in, and we're going to change it to make it a 4 by 5 aspect ratio so that you can very easily take a vertical video and turn it into a normal Instagram post. So as you can see, we need to change our sequence setting to 1080 by 1350. This is going to give us the proper ratio so that our video fits perfectly in a normal Instagram post. So let's go into our editing software. You're going to find your sequence that you created. If you don't have a secondary sequence that you've already duplicated to try and add a musical track to, what you can do now is take the sequence you have been working on and duplicate it right now. So I'm going to do copy, paste. I'm going to take this sequence and title it um, 4 by 5 Instagram post. Okay. I'm going to double click to open it. And then I'm going to right click the sequence and I'm going to go to sequence settings. Here it brings up a panel where I can see all of the actual settings that my sequence is using. And if we go back to our different Instagram ratios, we can see we need to switch this to 1080 by 1350 instead of 1920. So I'm going to type that in and I'm going to hit OK. This is going to ask you, do you really want to make this change to your sequence settings? It's going to change some previews and it's going to just simply remove any of the previews that you had already possibly had rendered. No big deal. We're going to hit OK. And there we go. Now we have our edit with the proper aspect ratio. But if you scroll through here, you can see that there are some changes that need to be made. We're also cutting off the top and the bottom of our video because we went to a very vertical format to a much more shortened format. So the way to really kind of get around that and fix that is to go to these clips. I'm going to select this first one and I'm going to go to the effects controls panel on the top left and I'm going to click the motion function and I'm going to take the position and I'm going to drag and scoot the video itself up. So that's what it's looking like now. What it was before was there. So you're simply just kind of reframing the shots to match this new formatting. It's a little extra step that you're going to have to do, but the cool thing is that you can take one piece of content and repurpose it to multiple platforms. So we'll kind of play through the rest of this video and see what other shots need to be reframed. And that actually brings me to another tip for this kind of scenario. If at the beginning of your clip, now that we've changed the aspect ratio, it's well framed at the beginning, but you don't like it at the end, for example, I'm framed okay in here, but then we get to the end and we don't really, end of that clip, and we don't really get to see the full waterfall, we can set a keyframe at the beginning of the clip where we like the framing, go to the end, and move the framing to where we want it to be. And what's going to happen is as that clip plays through, because we created these two keyframes, it's going to progressively get to that point at the end of the clip. So let's play that through. So you see it tilted up so that we could see the waterfall because these keyframes that we created by using this little stopwatch function. Let's see these next shots now. Okay, looks pretty good. So for this final shot, if we wanted to add a little bit more motion, we can go to the beginning, select the clip, go to the effects control panel, go to the motion tab, hit that stopwatch, move the beginning of the shot all the way to the bottom, go to the end of the shot, scooch the end of the shot all the way to the top, and now if we play through it, we have that natural handheld movement, but then we added this movement along with it just to add a little extra dynamic layer. And now that we have that, let's go ahead and export this version. We have the in point set at the beginning, the out point set at the end. I'm going to do Command M to bring up our export settings. H.264, we're set with that. And because it's going to be going to a mobile device, we're going to do mobile device 1080p. And just like the other edit, you can scrub through here to preview what it'll be looking like. And again, we have these black bars on the side here because we have not yet worked in the 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So we're going to click match source. Boom. That gives us the exact 4 by 5 aspect ratio we're wanting for our Instagram post. We're going to do render at maximum depth. We're going to hit maximum render quality. We're going to scroll down on the audio tab. We're going to make sure our bit rate is set to 320. That's the highest audio settings we can have. And finally, we're going to go up to our output name, click that, and we're going to set our name and our destination for our export. Now, what I do if I'm exporting something that's similar to a previous export, I'm just going to click on that previous export because that's going to pop up a similar name. It's going to save me a little bit of time. I don't have to type quite as much. Mount Shasta V1, and this is going to be Instagram post. Okay. If we had made changes in our edit and updated or changed shots or music, this would be a version 2. But because no physical changes have been made except for that aspect ratio change, it's technically still the same version. So we're going to keep that V1. We're going to hit save and hit export. And now if we navigate to our project files, go to our editing folder, we have both of our versions here. So you can see we have our story post. Now that is a waterfall. And then we have our secondary version where we did a little bit of experimenting with adding a soundtrack. I hope that that gave you some insights on the techniques and the strategy on keeping your workspace clean, using a good workflow that's going to speed up your editing, and really learn how to use the different options that you have of using different audio styles, using music, and cutting your footage in a way that actually creates the feeling that you want in your viewer. We clearly had the same exact footage. We used different editing techniques to create a different final product, and then we exported those different edits in different formats that matched up for different ways of sharing that content. So, to summarize what we did in this chapter, we first started with our workflow where we learned how to organize, back up our content, as you know, one of my favorite parts, and keep a clean workspace, which is going to really come in handy as we go through this course and our edits get more and more complex and we learn more high level techniques. After we captured and gathered all of our content, we then started pulling our selects inside of our editing software. This allowed us to really organize our editing timeline and create a really rough but organized and color coded structure so that we didn't really have to worry about what the final edit would look like, but we got to kind of put things in places and experiment a little to find out the ordering and the overall flow of our edit. After that, we went into creating our first draft edit. This is where we really focus more on pacing, rhythm, honing in on the shots that we were going to use, and started to really get an idea of what our edit was going to look like. Then we moved into refining our audio. We used crossfades to make our cuts a lot more seamless. We balanced out the levels of our audio between our clips. And then we tried a secondary edit where we used music instead of our background audio from our footage. And this is just the beginning. We're like honestly just scratching the surface on the post production process. So we're going to grow a lot. We're going to learn a lot during this course. So I'm excited and I will see you in the next chapter.